You're tuned in to Night Vision Radio, exposing the truth, one secret at a time. Prepare yourself as we explore the shadow worlds of suppressed history, secret knowledge, forbidden religion, and shine a light on the conspiracies to keep it all from us. Welcome to Night Vision Radio. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Night Vision. I'm your host, René Barnett. Looking forward to tonight's show. Got a guest that we haven't had on in a couple of years, so there's a lot to catch up on because a lot has been going on. I wanted to take a quick moment to say happy holidays to everyone. Merry Christmas, happy Hanukkah, whatever you're celebrating. I hope you enjoy it to the fullest. So that goes out to everyone in the world. Happy holidays. Now, tonight, we've got with us Tony Topping. He's a British UFO experiencer, I guess you would say, a writer and a broadcaster. He's been following this UFO subject. But not only that, he has an uncanny way of coming into contact with UFOs and aliens. Not only that, unfortunately, also some possibly more sinister characters than that in people from unknown agencies who've been targeting and harassing him for years now because of his intimate contact with UFOs. So, Tony, I just want to jump right in if we can. I know you've got a late night or early morning, and I do appreciate. I know you've got some family things going on. So extra special thanks to you tonight for joining us, and do give our best to your whole family, and that you have happy holidays, that your mother makes a quick recovery. I know she's ill at the moment, but home from hospital, which tells me that's good news. So thanks so much for joining us in the midst of all your holiday plans and your medical care and everything that's going on at your place. Thanks for taking a break. Thanks for taking a break from all that to join us and bring us up to speed. Now, you have, as I said, an uncanny way of coming into contact, not only coming into contact with UFOs and sighting them, but you've gotten some absolutely marvelous videos, and people can see those online on your website. Now, is your website tonytopping.wordpress.com?
That's right, yes. My website's tonytopping.wordpress.com, and then I've got a YouTube site called Tony Ops UFO. On the day of the announcement in the U.S. press of the Pentagon carry on with the UFOs, my web statistics went absolutely through the roof. I've never seen anything quite like it. Visitors from all across America, straight up statistics on my website. Although I haven't received any kind of inquiries about it as such, it's been quiet. That might be the quiet before the storm with me, because I'm somewhat wired into the grid, and I know how deep this rabbit hole goes. I don't know it all, but I've possibly seen it all in spanning 40 years in dealing with the UFO phenomenon. I think the thing is, René, is that we as contact experiencers, not UFO researchers, but the contact experiencer element of the UFO phenomena, we are ridiculed, we are laughed at, we're bullied, we're this, we're that, we're the other, we're anything but what's going on with us in certain circles. That includes the I suppose you could say the New York Times, the journalist on the New York Times.
Well,
yeah.
I was going to bring that up because, I'm sure everybody that's listening, is aware of this New York Times article that just came out and about this secret government program that was, funded in part by Robert Bigelow, and
Yeah.
he and Harry Reid, who
Yeah.
lives there in Las Vegas and is an old time friend of Bob Bigelow, were behind this. And I wanted to ask you about that because I'm hearing a lot of different. It's raised a lot of controversy. I'm hearing a lot of people say things like, "Oh, wow, this is great. Our government has been taking seriously the UFO study." Other people saying, "You know what? We're getting set up here. Here they're getting us ready to spend billions of dollars on weaponizing space, because the language of what was released was all about a threat." So there seems to be few different camps on that. So where do you come down on that information that was just released?
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? Because having done 40 years of dealing with this, having had what appears to be panicked officialdom, or appears to be, I mean, I'm not sure, what appears to be panicked officialdom from the German government calling me about all this. It's true to say that certain elements of white hat and black hat, I think in the national security elements, are very, very concerned about what is going on with the UFO phenomena. What they've possibly done at the moment is actually effectively once again told you really nothing of what's going on. They haven't gone down the route. You see, Dr. Greer, despite all the people slugging the hell out of him, Dr. Greer lost, I think, his secretary to harassment. He was harassed because he went down the avenue of unacknowledged special application projects. He went down the avenue of discovering that some elements of the national security apparatus within the Joint Chiefs of Staff in the UK, for example, we could use Admiral Hill Norton, who indicated in public that he was shut out from the UFO. He knew it was going on, but he was being shut out. Now, he was First Sea Lord and Secretary General of NATO at one point in the proceedings. He knew that there was something going on, but he couldn't get to the bottom of it. You've then got the element, as I say, of Dr. Greer, who was on the special unacknowledged special access projects route, going into this very deeply. And now he seems to have been pushed aside to make way for this kind of very nice kind of project that the Pentagon have done to look at UFOs. They've done something similar like Project Condign, which was to research. Project Condign in the UK was to research plasma phenomena. And it looks to me, I've given it the briefest of reads, but because of time constraints at my end, actually, I really need to deeply go into it. But the Pentagon have also done like a similar thing. The secrecy element of the UFO and the plasma relationship is that you need to look at Project Hesdalen in Norway to discover that the astrophysicist and the team there discovered 5% of the UFOs at Hesdalen in Norway were under intelligent control, and they had intelligence to them, and that one of the astrophysicists reached the conclusion that we were dealing with an extraterrestrial civilization that could manipulate plasma like we could manipulate DNA. These are the bits that were emitted. Probably this is the classified bit of Project Condign. It may well be, I would estimate, the classified bit of the Pentagon project as well. The discovery that you have life, doing that, life forms, biology, all in that area, could well be kept away from the general public. The security issues around the UFO phenomenon are absolutely shocking. After 40 years of veteran of dealing with it, it would be naive to suggest that there is not a threat in this area or there is not security issues in this area. It's like the UFO phenomena is similar to looking at an ocean, a vast ocean, and in some cases you're seeing all the nice fish swimming around, but you don't notice that there could be sharks out there. Even the ancient spiritual traditions have indicated, one in particular, the Toltec tradition, and not the one of Castaneda, but the work of what is meant to be the true link to Atlantis with the spiritual teaching. The work of a guy called Tayun Maris in the Toltec tradition has indicated that even though they're in UFOs with the shiny flashing lights, they may not understand ethics. They may not understand human rights. That's the fundamental thing. Trouble is with being a contact experiencer is that you're met with a very strange vagary from them, which means that you're running round in circles thinking that you're wonderful, that you've got the UFOs coming over the house, but the stakes and agenda are even higher than that, and you can get yourself in quite a quagmire with it if you're not careful, because aliens have agendas. The UFOs, the population, they just have agendas. That is the way it is. They have their own military, they have their own populations, all that. That's as real as it gets, actually. I don't think that they're going to be classifying that, you know.
Then what seems more plausible to me, and I think this is what you're saying, correct me if I'm wrong, that, you know, there may be different types of beings that are out there. It's just like we have on Earth. I mean, not every person that you're going to meet up with on Earth, you want to meet in a dark alley. You know, we have very wonderful people on Earth, and we have very horrible people. So
you got it.
It could be possible that's the same. I mean, why would it be different?
It is. It's not different. No.
Now,
the thing.
Can you, for people who may not be aware, you know, I see we have a lot of people tuning in tonight. Could you give us just a thumbnail sketch of your experiences, how it started? I think you know, there was something in your childhood, but didn't you kind of get started in the early 90s in your serious research about this?
Yes, I did. I mean, at the moment, we know, because there's more than there's a family member working on it as well. But we kind of like know that the high level of strange goings on that I'm having is possibly also bloodline related as well. My bloodline's probably rare. So we're tracing that back at the moment with some fascinating insights that there are indeed links. The bloodline seems to link to certain fascinating features and people that would indicate that there's something going on in the bloodline. But my first experience was at age 2, and that was an incident that happened, about age 2, where we had this kind of spectacular vision walking through a wall. It was actually, believe it or not, it was Sanskrit related. And this vision, extraordinary it was, went through a wall. Now, according to the other school of thinking, that is false memory syndrome, and that didn't happen because a kid at the age of 2 cannot cognitively process that kind of thing, and that is utter rot. The thing with the false memory syndrome is there seems to be this kind of failure to acknowledge that some of the directors on it were involved in mind control projects. And the thing is that you will get if you're a contact experiencer who's the real deal, you will get targeted by Dr. Strangelove and his merry circus. Mm-hmm. Where it went wrong with America and the national security element of UFOs is they would insist on buying a used car from aliens that was a bit dodgy, and they've paid for it ever since. And that metaphor, that analogy, if I said that in front of Eisenhower, he would know exactly what I was talking about, because it was Eisenhower that was warning of this military-industrial kind of situation that was going on.
Yes, he was.
It was indeed. Eisenhower was indeed warning of it. And I think possibly some other world leaders also hinted at it. If you want to go further back, Benjamin Disraeli indicated that there were forces out there. You see with the UFO phenomena, there's 2 components to it. There's the UFO phenomena, there's the Pentagon, there's the MOD, there's all this kind of military stuff doing all this disclosure, but failing to mention the esoteric elements behind it, which do indeed go back to bloodline and do indeed go back to the ancient spiritual kind of conflict of man and his place in the universe and those forces that maneuver around us. And I've seen them firsthand. I've even collided with them, René. We had an incredible incident about 3 years ago. One has to be very respectful of what one says. I think it was about 3 years ago where we had the kind of... have you seen the film The Devil's Advocate at all? Have you seen that film with Pacino? I wonder if you've seen it at all. He plays John Milton. No, he plays the devil in the form of a solicitor, in the form of a chief executive called John Milton. And and of course, it's quite an amazing film because the devil did a tremendous job of telling the world that he didn't exist. but you've got all that backdrop going on. And it's interesting because the bit that probably that they won't be telling you about with all this Pentagon kind of stuff is the kind of element of the Collins Elite, the work of an agency called Collins Elite. What I'm going to do is I'm coming out with so much data. I just need to reset my head and just go where I'm going with the narrative here. Because basically, I think if we start with the esoteric behind the UFO phenomena and what the US government discovered in 1950, we will find that that probably underpins the secrecy and cover-up today, as well as the fact that you've got Operation Paperclip going on in World War II, and the fact that it was more classified than the H-bomb. You've got quite a situation going on. The fact that you've got Nazi secret societies precisely channeling data and information to do with the design of UFOs, as in Maria Osric with the Full Society, the fact you've got all that going on creates quite a little blend of secrecy, while at the same time they've put this in the media to indicate disclosure and openness. I went on the site of the Star Academy, and the first thing I was hit with was shop here, buy this, buy that, buy the other. I'm not saying that they're a commercial, but it's just very, for somebody like myself, it's a bit light and fluffy. It's a bit kind of tipping the toe in the water, but it's not kind of quite explaining fully at all what is exactly going on with the UFO phenomena.
Right.
Yeah.
If I could go back to something you said that really caught my ear there, you talked about your researching your bloodline, and that now when you're talking about bloodline, are you talking about ancestry?
Yeah.
And you said that there are some peculiarities. Can you share any of those?
One peculiarity, and by the way, I have no idea. Just for transparency on air, I know that esoteric forces are present and that they've been in my experiences since early childhood, and that will be because of the kind of the kind of the bloodline who I am. So the bloodline I have possibly, we believe, tracing back goes into India, goes into nobility into India. There's a possible link to the Sinclair family or the St. Clair family at Roslin as well. We're working on all these links. We're trying to sort out what's going on with it, because it's kind of like it's kind of like from where I'm sat, I'm asking myself, why am I having these experiences? And I'm the last to know anything. But for example, I've been targeted. I've had situations occur. What goes on because of holding a deck of cards, René. I'm maybe not explaining myself very well, but I hold a deck of cards. Nobody is telling me what the deck is that I'm holding, but my God, it's a winning formula. But nobody is telling me what this deck of cards is or why I'm being targeted at the level I'm being targeted at. Nobody is telling anything just at the moment. And so, for example, I gave a talk at the UFO Academy in Watford a few weeks back, and really all began really in '92, where I had a UFO coming in over the garden. We had this UFO coming in over the garden in about '92, and I didn't think anything of it. It was like something out of Close Encounters. I can certainly guarantee that I will be filming a UFO again. I know that I'm going to get one on camera quite good. We need to have some outstanding footage, you see. So I know that that's happening. And I know that I think that this is a very ancient bloodline kind of man and his place in the cosmos battle. I think it's also about the realization of humanity within the cosmos to the higher dimensional consciousness. I think that is going on. And I think that it's effectively being dumbed down, effectively being attacked, effectively manipulated so that nations come into conflict with each other. For example, with Russia and America, Russia are the enemy. But all of a sudden, Russia is the emerging threat. But yet, in the eyes of Russia, America is the emerging threat. World leaders are being played like fiddles. And the big national security issue is this with the UFO phenomenon. It's a psychic one. Who protects the mind of the president when he's asleep from these forces? Or the mind of the Russian premier when he's asleep from these forces? because, as the UFOs have said, it would appear that mankind and his place in the universe is a highly complex kind of situation that goes on. And so, therefore, these are very worrying kind of scenarios that are happening. And I know for a fact that when I gave this UFO Academy talk in Watford, I was talking very deeply about what happened to me. And one of the things that happened to me was the fact that the UFOs have been coming over the house for a very long time. And I will know when they're present over the house, and they will tell me when they're here. And I'm in a very unique position to have information being given to me. Even though it's vague, it's drip, drip, drip. So kind of like these, what's happening is that my research does not come from reading on the internet. It doesn't come from so-called, well, not so-called, but retired individuals who have served in agencies or anything like that, because it's coming directly from the UFOs that are coming in over the house. And they are kind of like explaining me things, telling me things. Some of it's absolutely hair-raising. Some of it, René, by strange irony, I've even had to put a classified stamp on and say, can't talk about that. And so that element of can't talk about that provoked some very strange reactions. So this kind of lecture I gave at UFO Academy Watford, one of the things that I talked about was a vision that I had. This vision, about 4 to 5 years ago, involved Nordic extraterrestrials. It involved a spectacular vision of these 2 triangle craft coming in over a farmer's field near me, and these 2 dynamic doomsday clocks. The illustrator Lloyd Canning brought them to life beautifully. One says 4 to midnight, the other says 5 to midnight. The thing is the situation is, what is interesting about this Pentagon release that's going on with information is actually in some way, even though it's quite light touch stuff, even though it is, it's kind of like placed in the consciousness of the collective, and it affects time and our future in some way, even at the very minimal level. It's unprecedented. It's kind of like placed, because the oppression of the knowledge that we are not alone in the universe is heavy. It's horrendous, the actual oppression of it. I could describe it as being a silent police force behind the scenes that's actually oppressing this information. So really, when you see this Pentagon press release and well, it wasn't even the Pentagon, they haven't even acknowledged it, have they? I think it's just when you see these people attempting to put this disclosure out in the open, they're actually challenging this giant secrecy circus that is oppressive and controlling. And so it's quite brave, really, in that sense, in terms of what is going on. So this thing that I did at UFO Academy Watford explained this vision of the nuclear, of the kind of the warning that was given to me by Nordics. And what happened was these Nordic ETs, these blonde blue-eyed ETs, have been flying over the house constantly, have saved my sanity on 3 occasions. They have cured me from illness, which I'll go into with you after I've just explained this bit. This vision, the nuclear stuff, all connected to conflict, all connected to the nuclear stuff. And I was filming for the BBC at this UFO Academy talk, and I discovered 4 days later, the phone goes, and there's a guy on the end of it, actual guy on the end of it, claiming to be, in a German accent, claiming to be part of the German, what shall we call it now? He was part of the defense of the Constitution of Germany, part of National Defense Intelligence. Look us up. We've got an office above this cafe in Frankfurt, he said. Look at that, which I found quite hilarious. And he was quite, what's the word I'm looking for? Quite agitated, excited, panicked. Didn't know who I was until he'd heard my lecture. He clearly indicated, I represent the National Defense Intelligence of Germany. Since the Cold War, we've all been friends after the Cold War, which he lies about because German intelligence is, even to this day, very, very powerful. Everybody thinks that the Israeli intelligence services are powerful. Germany's got a lot of clout. So he's going on to me about this vision that I had. He wanted to know about the interior of the craft, the triangle craft that was flying over the house. He wanted to know about the vision. And I remember him wanted to know about all the stuff that I wasn't talking about regarding my experiences, some of which is quite shocking, is related to time events, events in time, events in the future. I'll come to that in a minute as well, René. So he was a very panicked guy. And the conversation went along the lines of, I don't require anything from you. I don't need anything from you. What do you want from me? Because I don't want anything from you. And I am certainly not going to tell you the full picture of what is going on. And I found it disrespectful that he rang on a private number out of the blue and didn't tell me how he'd got my phone number, which I found utterly disrespectful. And then about a week later, on the Sunday evening, I get yet again another call from a similar German guy wanting information. Don't know who the hell they are from Adam. I found it utterly disrespectful. So he got disconnected before the conversation even continued. I'm 40 years a veteran at this. I've been at the sharp end. I'm not having goon squads ringing me up out of the blue, asking questions and not telling me how they've got the phone number. I found it really irritated me. You know what I'm saying, René? This is not a joke. This is not a laugh. So it's kind of like that really did put. And the other thing as well, quite oddly, was that the vision associated with the triangles in this vision that I had is associated with a farmer's field. That field in particular has been under constant aerial patrol by the military, by the Air Force. A Hercules C-130 of the Special Aviation Wing about 2 years ago circled my house nearly 7 times, backwards, forwards, trying to suss out what was going on. Meanwhile, and this is very true, while they're flying around, it is quite common for a UFO to appear while they're flying about, and they haven't seen it. I've seen it, but they haven't seen it. It's quite common for the UFOs to be aware of air traffic. It's quite common for these UFOs to be respectful of our air traffic. The Nordics in their triangles are very respectful of our air traffic and our military. And they're kind of like they've been coming in over the house for quite a while. So my situation panicked this German guy who I don't know who he is, but that's who he said he represented. But the thing is, René, is that in my line of work, I can be stalked by fantasists. I can be stalked by people who think they work for the government. It's a real occupational hazard. And I can be stalked by deluded individuals. This is a very real scenario. And equally, I can be smiled and waved at by journalists, by TV. And equally, I've been very lucky in that I've got a lot of broadcasting work coming up this year as well, talking about my experiences, you see. Perhaps I'm losing the narrative, I don't know. Perhaps I'm waffling, but I'm just reflecting on that single incident with the German guy.
That's really weird. Now, was that recently?
Yeah, it was recently, as in this year. Yeah, it was recently, as about September, October time when he called. It is no coincidence, and this may sound crazy, but I don't think it is. It's no coincidence that some of my UFO contact experiences are related to female ETs. There was a spectacular incident a few weeks ago, which freaked me out a bit, actually. But it happened, you see. René, it happened. And I've no investment in lying. I've made no money from this at all, really. I run it as a very little micro business, doing me talks and things. But really, on numerous occasions, I've said to the person, look, if you can't afford it, don't worry about it. I'll just turn up and do it. It's not about the money. It's about the bloody message. It's about getting it out there. So some people are under the impression that we make mega bucks from all this, and we don't. It's not about that, really. For me, it's never really been about that. It's about getting the message out there. But you see, it's no coincidence at all that the interactions I have with the UFOs are female.
Well, now that's really interesting. Before you get into that, we're going to take a quick break because I really want to explore that subject. That's very interesting.
Yeah, something is exploring. It's interesting.
Absolutely. And so please stay with us when we come back. More with Tony Topping. Hang there. Welcome back to Night Vision. I'm your host, René Barnett. If you're just joining us, we're talking with British UFO researcher, actually experiencer, more like it, targeted individual, Tony Topping. And boy, we have some great chats during the breaks on these. I should just keep the show rolling, I think, Tony, because we have some great conversations during the breaks. But before the break, we were talking about your personal UFO experiences, and you said there was a largely female element going on with the aliens and your experiences. Can you explain that a little bit, and why is that important, and why do you think that is?
Well, this is it, because I think some of my experiences will be screen memory related, in that what I think is going on and what's happened to me will be two entirely different things.
Sure.
Screen memories is a phrase coined by Darrell Sims. I think whereby, for example, you could be all nice and fluffy in a nice meadow somewhere, when in fact, while you're asleep, when in fact you're being abducted by a UFO. The abduction situation does go on. The abduction of cattle, the abduction of this, the abduction of that, causes serious ethical concerns. It really does. Even among the alien extraterrestrial groups that we see around us, it causes concern among them as well. And a few weeks back, what you've got to remember is that I'm targeted. In the early days, in the 90s, when it was all kicking off, I was really being stalked by some crazy Dr. Strangelove characters. One guy who's still out there who targeted me is probably living with the regret of it, from what I understand, as I have mysterious forces that guide me. And he targeted me for a number of years with MK Ultra style technology. The mind invasive technology does exist. If you're targeted, you'll know about it. And the thing is with it is it's dismissed, it's played down. You'll get even people on Facebook saying words to the effect of, I'm delusional, I'm a fantasist. There's nothing delusional about being targeted with the mind control. And then you can kind of like click another level, René. I mean, for example, you can be awoken back in the day when it was all going on.
When we go out to eat, we never agree on where to go.
I want burgers! Pizza.
Tacos it is.
The one thing we do agree on is we all want unlimited high-speed data. That's why we switched to Metro PCS.
Stop by Metro PCS with the whole family and get 4 lines with unlimited LTE data for just $100, period. Metro PCS. Wireless. Figured out.
Coverage not available in some areas. Offers require port and of number not currently active on T-Mobile network. During congestion, the fraction of customers using more than 35 gigs per month may notice reduced speeds. Video streams at up to 40p. No tethering. See store for details and terms and conditions.
At 3 and 4 in the morning with gunfire. Woken at 3 and 4 in the morning to tell me how much salaries they were on. Screaming. All plausible, deniable. Fully plausible, deniable. Even they calling themselves the police of the silence. Quite horrendous. But it's all about evolution. But at that time, I didn't realize that. And what happens is that you then move, your experiences propel you and move you at an evolutionary level so that you evolve beyond them. And they're the ones who end up reaching for the drinks cabinet because they've suddenly realized that they've blundered into something and walked into something that's very big and very ferocious. And the level of targeting has been quite nasty. Very nasty indeed. And it leads me into an experience I had with a female ET. So that's where we're heading for.
Okay, now let me just try to get this clear in my head here. When you're talking about being targeted, you're not really talking about being targeted by the aliens. You're talking about people from unknown agencies or organizations, something like that.
So for example, the guy from Germany, sorry to interrupt you, René, but
sure.
Just to get a clarification for your listeners, the guy from Germany, he phones me up, he says, I work for the National Security Intelligence and blah, blah, blah. He's taking signature cluster analysis of my emotions on the phone. I've got to assume that he had software wired in. I've got to assume that he was listening to my voice where he was trying to measure my brain signature cluster in some way. I've got to assume that he was doing MK Ultra style stuff, which he was. Actually, there was some very mysterious activity with that after he put down the phone. So there was a conversation going on the phone, but there can be a conversation going on with voice-to-skull technology, which is plausible, deniable. It can happen. And so the conversation with the voice-to-skull technology was one of clear panic. This guy, he was panicking. But it's no coincidence, René, which leads us quite nicely in this German guy. leads us quite nicely to the fact that the the Chancellor of Germany is female.
Yeah.
The German Defence Minister is female. Our Prime Minister is female. The aliens coming in over my house are female. It leads us, and what happens is that, and I could be completely wrong, females love to talk. And the thing with that is they do, and it's a universal thing. It's not just human. It's alien. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter which female you are. They just love to communicate.
Well, I do agree. Women are generally good communicators.
Yeah, they are genuinely good communicators, and it is my considered opinion, and it could be an utter load of Tommy Rock. It could be that the guy is a crank caller that got my number when he shouldn't have done somehow. It could all be that as well. But there's a percentage of me that suggests that there's a possibility that within the framework of, let's say, the German government or something like that, some communication has occurred with them via some actual contact situation has occurred with them where they've literally spoken to them. It is of my opinion that the UFOs have spoken in the way that they do. You see, they don't speak. Don't you kid yourself, René, and I'm sure you don't, and your listeners aren't daft either. All this kind of stuff in the media, this paradigm consensus of we're seeking the search for extraterrestrials, we're sending out radio signals, we're doing this. Extraterrestrials don't do it in that way. They're already communicating with us. They're already communicating with us. They're already here. And they use a space-time continuum environment to communicate with whoever they wish to communicate with. Hence me saying that when a world leader or whoever they are sleeping, that's when they'll come in and speak, which is what they do. They do that in the dreamscape. It's like from the movie Inception. So there is
by contrast to that, you are well aware of, at least at times, when they're communicating with you. Yeah. You said they tell me when they're coming or when they're overhead. Yeah. How do you receive that information?
It's very interesting because sometimes the information can be actually physical. Sometimes the information can be communicated to a mysterious third party who's understood the concept of what's going on and has made the move to communicate my version of UFO disclosure via this model and the version of UFO disclosure that we're seeing at the moment are two very different things. I know that I am being closely watched. Events are being closely watched. I know that the Air Force are continually scrambling, coming in over the house. I've reason to suspect that's because there is presence of UFOs. Continually, there's this constant theme of, I'll tell you what it is, a constant theme of a technological base that's nearly 800 years ahead of us, a theme of understanding a spirituality, a cosmos, the theme of a higher dimensional communication, and also a specific targeting of certain key people in government. I do believe to communicate with them. I do believe that's going on in a way that is very smart, in a way that's not seen in the public domain. That there again, René, I could be wrong, could be barking up the wrong tree, but after 40 years of it, I think not. Got to be careful what you say, because you could end up being carted off. So you've just got to be careful with it. What I'm pointing out is that the incident that I had, which was recent, and there's been one of been many, was the fact that I was getting hit, targeted again, only just recently, a few months back, and there was some very serious personal issue going on, and I remember walking down the street to my local shop at about 6 o'clock. And all of a sudden, and it's on my YouTube channel, this UFO appeared, literally appeared over the houses. And it hovered and it waited, and it's very similar to the UFOs that are like plasma-type objects that you see, the white-coloured ones, constantly throughout our filming, throughout films and TV, we will see these white-coloured plasma-type UFOs appear. For example, I was watching something on the Vietnam War the other day on BBC Radio 4, just flicking around. Parachutists dropping out of aircraft over Vietnam. This UFO just appears from nowhere, flies right across them. Colombo, there's a famous clip of Columbo where he's just talking to somebody in a scene at the beach. This UFO appears again, just appears, flies through camera, flies off. Forces TV in the UK doing a documentary. Unbeknown to them, a UFO appears and the camera's still rolling. The cameraman has not seen it. It appears and just flies off again. And over my house, the UFO, twice on 2 occasions, communicates with my TV antenna. It illuminated a TV antenna. It illuminated my ham radio antenna. We've got to take the ham radio antenna for analysis, because I believe that the metal structure of the ham radio antenna may have been affected by it. So it's this theme of communication and the theme of a higher dimension and the theme of it being targeted towards, let's say, the UK, Germany and other nations. In other words, René, they are communicating very smartly and the public aren't quite seeing it, and the current disclosure that we're seeing in the New York Times isn't really getting it at all. And that seems to be what's going on. And so what happened is that I was sat in my living room a few weeks ago after having quite an horrendous time with the targeted. I'd seen the UFO, and I'm just giving you an example of your listeners what happened. I'm sat there having a cup of tea. I've not got my shirt on, René. Control yourself. I'm shirtless.
Oh, my
calm down,
goodness.
René.
I've
It's
got the
quite a sight,
papers.
René. Oh, it's quite a sight. I mean, it must have been quite a sight for the female alien. Next minute I know, I hear this voice in the room. My mother didn't hear it, but I heard it. And it said, may I touch you, in the most polite way. And she ran her finger down my chest. And it freaked me out. It was her, blonde, blue-eyed, but not blonde, blue-eyed as in Nordic, blonde, blue-eyed as in the tall whites, the tall white type aliens. And she was very, very miffed off about what I had to put up with. She was very, very annoyed. This lady who was an alien female, very, very annoyed about what I was having to put up with. And she voiced her opinion that she was as well. And she voiced her opinion that she was getting some type of grief is the word, some type of, she's a maverick, this alien lady, and she stood out in the crowd because she said there is a taboo where she's not quite allowed to do what she was doing, but she was going to do it anyway. And on numerous occasions, I know on numerous occasions when these UFOs have appeared, that they've been female pilots, that they've spoken to me. I've heard them, that they've kept coming to check on me and flying off. They keep coming to check on me again and flying off. Sometimes the Air Force would turn up after 5 minutes after they'd gone, but they're female. Because it's the females of this world that are fighting, actually really standing up to the corruption that's going on. And it certainly sends a clear signal to whatever is going on with me to back it off, because the disclosure and the issue of national security in UFOs is controlled by non-human elements, René. So we've got this marvellous work of Steve Bassett, Dr. Greer, Tom, the guy, Tom, who's the pop star, trying to do all this work. Yeah, Tom DeLonge, doing all this work to try and get disclosure. That disclosure is controlled by non-human elements. And that's the rub. That's the crux of the matter, really.
That's it.
That's it. That is it. And the thing is that sure enough, these white hat guys who are trying to force this will, I have no doubt, if they don't already know, will suddenly realise that what Eisenhower was talking about is indeed quite correct. It really is correct that there is that only an alert and knowledgeable citizenry will conquer what is going on. Because from what I've been told, what is going on is very shocking behind the scenes regarding aliens and UFOs. It really is. I don't know whether that's been of help to the listeners in any way. I'm a bit tired, and I don't know whether I've delivered.
Well, what I can't get out of my head now. This psychic image of this alien female touching your bare chest, and I want to know, why do you think she did that? Was she doing that because she wanted to see what it felt like? Was she doing it because she wanted to do something for you?
No, well, both actually. One, it's that they do kind of, I can only describe it as they do this guardian thing with me. Really, honestly, this alien lady, very formidable, you wouldn't want to piss her off, René, and she was pissed off, pardon my language. She was not very happy about what was going on, because the targeting has been horrendous. It's a very personal thing what she was miffed off about, but it was a moral principle. It was to do with the fact that I'm a carer as well and all that kind of thing, and the sheer pressure that I was under. And this is what was really, really she wasn't happy about. And on a couple of occasions, she's come and visited me, and I've had the most bizarre scenarios with her where she's just come to visit me. Now, let us get balance here, René. For all I know, that could be the military doing illegal experimentation on me. But you see, the information that they're talking about and the information that they're doing and what they're doing puts me in a very, very unique position. So, and also she's female, and so therefore I have reason to suspect that she may have, and could well have, communicated with other people in government via the same method, via when you're asleep, they come in via a space-time continuum environment, and all that kind of thing. Really, the UFO disclosure happens at their pace. They control disclosure. It's not the other way around. Human beings do not. They are holding the cards of disclosure. The people in the UFOs, and it's distinctly possible that ordinary members of the public are being contacted by them, and they are controlling flow of information and bypassing the secrecy. There's a possibility that that could truly happen. At the moment, what we've got with the New York Times stuff is UFOs in the sky, what the generals thought of it, what the Air Force thought of it, what the former retired guys thought of them, but nobody dare lift up the comfort zone and go a bit further into contact experience. And the contact experiencers who are worldwide, Sweden, for example, in Sweden, there are guys and girls in Sweden who are having contact with Nordic aliens. They're from Andromeda. Andromeda is a populated galactic area. There are even human-looking extraterrestrials, people who look like us but not quite, and there are genuine security issues around it, René, a bit like we have on Earth. For example, the Nordics have their own judiciary, they have their own legal, so they have their own police. The Nordics do have law enforcement. They do have them because the Nordic people of Andromeda are a very large population. It kind of like, I mean, I remember just one experience with them, and the thing is I know as I'm talking about this, there's a big question mark in my head that says why, and I still don't quite know why. I really, really don't know why this is going on. I'm still trying to get to the bottom of it, and perhaps it may span 2 lifetimes. Is a possibility of it, such is the nature of time and extraterrestrial contact. It never works like we think it works, you see. So I'm exploring the reasons why, René, on that one. I've lost my thread of what I was talking about there. I was trucking along into something quite important. I've lost the thread of it. Where was I?
Oh, well, I don't know, but I just want to share with you really quick, Tony, that we've got some great questions coming out. I've never had so many questions coming out of the chat room, and we can either start taking those now if you don't mind. We can wait till after the break. Okay, great. Let's see. There was. Let me go back up to Adriana asked, "Why are aliens always portrayed as having a long lifespan?" Can you speak on that, Tony?
Well, that's interesting. If there is a question that I don't know the answer to, it's best just to say that I don't know the answer to that. I'm not sure what the lifespan is of them. I don't know the answer to that. I do know that their scientific base, there's wild exaggerations on the internet of their scientific base being 5,000 years ahead. So many years. Actually, from what they're telling me, they're about 900 years ahead of us, from what they're telling me, with their technology. But that technology possesses a spiritual component. I think the question might more be not so much of their lifespan, but an understanding of their spirituality. I would love to sit down with one of these people that are coming in over my house and discuss their spirituality, their religious thinking. Do they have an afterlife? Because that's incredibly complex. If they have an afterlife and we have an afterlife, that is more greater than what we could ever imagine, that the aliens also have an afterlife and their souls move on as well. That is a level of complexity that is staggering, absolutely staggering. These are the kind of questions that I'm asking, but I don't know the answer to the lifespan one.
Yeah, absolutely. That would have been one of my questions about an afterlife. Now, Max says, do you think full disclosure would throw us into an intergalactic war?
Do I think full disclosure would flow us into an interactive war? No. I think that full disclosure would alter human affairs to avoid a world war. It would alter human affairs in such a way that it would evolve. Ronald Reagan was quite correct in what he said, that if we faced a threat, we would have to unite. Eisenhower hinted at this. There are hints going on that there's something askew. Not is all fluffy in the world of UFOs. Not all of them want peace and light for humanity. Not all of them are respecters of human affairs. I found that very shocking, because I wanted to believe that UFOs were there, they were peaceful. After 40 years of veteran of all this, I've seen some hair-raising things behind the scenes with the UFOs and all that kind of thing. One of the issues, for example, that you might consider with the Nordic ET is the fact of technology. Who has got access to their technology? Their technology is very, very advanced. Who has access among them to their technology? Who is bad among them? Who is good among them? They are many and varied, as they have told me, and many and varied leads to problems. So these are the things that you've got to consider. But full disclosure, the trouble is that with disclosure, non-human elements control it. But there again, by placing disclosure in the public domain, may alter the events of human affairs to prevent a world conflict, I do believe. That's where it is with me at the moment, from what I'm seeing.
Right. I think that, it makes sense to me that what you're saying is absolutely right. It would either cause trouble or it would cause a uniting on this planet. But I think for it to cause an intergalactic war would have to assume that we're much more important than we probably are. Because, looking at all the other societies that seem to be so much more advanced than we are, I think that whether or not we know is not really of consequence, as much consequence to them as it would be to us.
That's right. They are quite aware of who we are. In the course of my liaison with Nordic ETs, they've told me information has come through that in some cases it's such a big universe, there are even civilizations out there that doesn't even know Earth exists, don't even know of us. It's a vast universe. It's a vast multi-dimensional entity, as the Nordics have said. I'm talking about experiences that span years, and I'm a man who still doesn't know why I'm getting all this coming at me. I still haven't been given a clear reason why at any point this is going on. And that is quite disappointing, really, as far as I'm concerned.
I mean, it speaks to a question from the chat room from Leslie. She says, why are certain people targeted more than others? And is that what you were talking about when you're talking about certain elements of your bloodline?
There's certain elements of bloodline, and the fact that did have at the time, certain abilities. For example, my father was an incredible healer. The relationship I had with him was an abusive one. It wasn't very pleasant, but yet he was an incredible healer. If I was naughty, he could actually, instead of hitting me when I was about 9 or 10, instead of smacking me, he'd just knock me out on the bed with a migraine. He would literally put me on the bed, a sparker, which gets some people quite annoyed about, because he shouldn't be doing that at my age. Well, I'm 10 years of age, and what he'd do is he'd just knock me sparker on the bed with a headache if I was naughty. I've seen him heal neuralgia. I've seen a woman come into the house wailing in agony with her teeth, and I've seen him put the hands, lay the hands on her and heal her. I've seen him do it with a cat that was at death's door. I've equally seen him be so angry at something that happened he closed his eyes, René, in the living room and said that he hoped the building in question went up in smoke and the boiler room of the building blew up. And he told me that when he was in the army in the 1950s, he was approached by the KGB, he said. I've no idea why he was approached, but he had to report it to his superiors. But this all pins back to the ability to, an ability known as ateability. If the guys involved in the remote viewing program stepped forward and said the classified elements of the psychic espionage that went on regarding UFOs and humanity, that would be quite shocking. That would actually be really very shocking indeed as to what humanity is actually up against. And it's called ateability because they had to have 8 martinis, because the ability to influence things with the mind was that prominent. They needed 8 martinis to get over it. It was called ateability. So some people have a sixth sense and some people have ateability. And my ateability got me into a shed load of trouble because it's uncharted waters and you do not understand as an individual the controlling esoteric forces around mankind. And I ended up with a knock at the door from one of those controlling forces as I slept that basically threatened to kill me, basically threatened to do me in, René, because it did not want human affairs influenced in a certain direction. And so what will happen is at some point in the proceedings, that collision course is still lurking in the background. It's like an ocean with sharks in it. And so what you do in that scenario is you hit the stop button and you don't do anything. And that might sound odd, but currently at the moment I'm doing nothing. Currently at the moment I should be getting media inquiries, I should be doing this, I should be doing that. I'm just doing nothing because I've got the bloody things coming in over my home. I've been speaking to them. I'm having strange goings on. I don't really need to do anything. And if it's correct that it is connected with all this, then the momentum and kind of force of it will propel me anyway without me having to do anything. It'd be like riding on a sea with the current going in a certain direction, I do assume. And that's quite liberating, René, actually. That's quite liberating. So that's the situation at the moment. But ateability, the ability to influence things is where people get into trouble, where human beings get into trouble.
That's very interesting. If we can take a quick break again, Tony, and when we come back, if I could hit you with a couple more questions from the chat room, and then I'm going to see what I can get you to share about what the aliens have told you about any possible future events or ramifications.
All right.
Beyond our control or not beyond our control. All right, hang in there with us. We'll be right back with Tony Topping. Welcome back to Night Vision. I'm your host, René Barnett. With me tonight is Tony Topping. He is a British researcher and experiencer, also a targeted individual, unfortunately. But he's sharing some incredibly interesting information with us tonight. Now, you mentioned something to me on the break. What was that? The Yasmatic?
Yeah, that's that. Yeah. The Yasmatic. Back in at the height of my at the height of the crazy comical circus goings on that have shaped my experiences, the incident that I had at age 2 relates to extraterrestrial phenomena, relates to extraterrestrials in a higher dimension. And relates to communication with them. And a few years ago, at the early stages where these UFOs that were coming in over the house declared their hand as to who they were, and they took a number of years to do that, they kind of like this spectacular vision of this, as I slept again, of this kind of bridge building towards me across another dimension. It was quite spectacular, but they're building a bridge towards me. In this game, it might not necessarily be me. There's a possibility that they're actually speaking to another agency or human individuals who have understood the work. The work being the fact that UFOs communicate in a space-time continuum environment. in that environment, time is somehow collapsed, so everybody hears and sees everybody. So if I'm in the year 2017, with apparent ease, somebody in the year 2130 could easily communicate in that environment because time is collapsed, kind of thing. This spectacular vision I had was of this ET coming over to me. The vision was spectacular. Isn't that nice to have such a nice vision? But the ramifications of it are very deep. And all they simply said was, Yazmat, just like that. And then the vision disappeared. One word, Yazmat. When you look up Yazmat on the internet, you discover that it means the causal nature of things in Sanskrit, meaning the causal nature, meaning what we do now has ramifications. And oddly enough, by a strange coincidence, there's also, I haven't gone too deeply into it, there's also a German link. It also stands for German bloodline as well. It also, oddly enough, it's related to that kind of thing. Isn't that strange? And then you get a phone call from Germany. It's really odd. Just really odd that lurks in the background as well. But basically, so what happened is with the asthmatic paradox, it means that events that we do now shape humanity's future, and part of the UFO phenomena is related to time travel and the future of mankind and where we're going to go in the future as well. And that can have hair-raising goings on attached to it. It's the area that I don't really talk about, but yet it's the area that should be talked about because it could alter the future to a better future.
Why don't you talk about it?
Well, I don't talk about it because with the Yazmatic paradox, if I talk about it, I might create it. And if I talk about it there again, I might not create it. It's very interesting that you can write the future as if you're writing a computer program. Even now, talking of it will provoke recoil many, many years down the line when I'm passed over and people look at this work. What's happening is that some of the recoil and some of the stuff that's going on is related to me speaking in the now. And that's what a Yazmatic paradox is, that your work has such an effect that it kind of, and what happened was in this environment, in terms of UFO disclosure, what happens is that with that, roughly speaking, from what I understand, from what the ET tells me, the ET will only go at a pace that humanity can handle. Their pace and what they're looking at is they're on schedule to communicate very deeply with us in about 125 years from now, according to them. They're on schedule to actually communicate with certain elements of humanity and communicate that what is going on with their science.
When we go out to eat, we never agree on where to go.
I want burgers. Pizza.
Tacos it is.
The one thing we do agree on is we all want unlimited high-speed data. That's why we switched to Metro PCS.
Stop by Metro PCS with the whole family and get 4 lines with unlimited LTE data for just $100, period. Metro PCS. Wireless. Figured out.
Coverage not available in some areas. Offers require port and of number not currently active on T-Mobile network. During congestion, the fraction of customers using more than 35 gigs per month may notice reduced speeds. Video streams at up to 40p. No tethering. See store for details and terms and conditions.
I don't know whether that's correct or whether it's wrong. I've no idea, but I have had some very strange visions related to that. I've had what is alleged communication, time travel related communication, regarding the fact that communication has indeed taken place across a time continuum with these extraterrestrials who have communicated their science and technology to us. And still, even further down the line, no government is smashing open the files and saying, oh, yes, aliens exist, oh, yes, they're here, blah, blah. It's not happening at all. Actually, our biggest threat is probably environmental. Our biggest threat is environmental and nature. They are the biggest threats facing mankind, actually, it would appear, from the data I'm seeing. And this is something that needs to be addressed. Definitely.
Now, of course, we're all seeing that data. Some of us are not acknowledging that data. No. But now, are you seeing data from other sources than what we're seeing?
I see data from other sources.
Have you been given information?
Yeah. So go on, carry on, René. Yeah.
Are they giving you any advice, or are they just showing you things?
At the moment, it's at the stage where they're just showing me things. There is something going on at the moment that that I'd rather not talk about because it's quite shocking. It's a deeply personal thing to do with my experiences, and it's to do with the future. It's to do with the stupidity of politicians leading us in a direction that is destructive. These politicians in Russia, China, America, Britain, leading down this avenue of insanity that ends in conflict is a very real kind of issue, a very real issue indeed. And so maybe to talk about that openly in public and to make an effort to prevent that in public could alter the future, could alter it so that the impact of it is somewhat less than what it actually is, kind of thing. Events can be altered. If you look at the Russian psychic espionage units, there's a very famous Russian espionage unit. Well, they're famous and underrated, actually, called Troop 10,003. And they've got a website called New Cosmology. And their psychics, these military psychics, talk about manipulation of human affairs, but also talk about something known as influence of human affairs at the point of planetary influence. And for example, esoterically speaking, at the moment, Syria is a major conduit for esoteric influence. I don't know why, but Syria is a bit of a no-go area for influencing, and it's as if there are forces out there that do not want peace and stability in our world, René. And yet that we're all going on about disclosure, but yet there's another hand being played that is just destructive, not peaceful, very sad, really. Very sad. It's in its own hell. Whatever is the cause of this is living in its own hell. And there's a lot to be said for Christianity and spiritual warfare. I think that's where the UFO phenomena somehow merges with biblical stuff and revelation and all that kind of thing, you know. Very real. Very real indeed. Demons, men and demons, all this kind of thing. The Vatican has a vast library about that, including aliens. These ETs know. They know how our world is structured. They know where it came from. They know what we're up against. I think they're assisting us. I really do. But some of the things I have seen, René, has been absolutely shocking. Just shocking. And it comes from time travel related incidents. And so the politicians of this world, which is why I think women politicians are a lot better than male politicians, actually. I think that in the hands of women, governments are in a safer place. But at the moment, there's a lot of disturbing saber rattling going on. And it's very disturbing indeed. Yeah,
I agree. You know, you mentioned that, when you first started talking about that experience with the tall white alien, female alien, and you said, women are better communicators, and you think that may be the reason. Well, then obviously that is a trait that you feel that human women and alien women share. So are there other traits? I mean, women are known to sort of be the nurturers, the sort of softer, do you find that in the female aliens as opposed to the males?
During the course of my experiences, which just I can't keep up with them, frankly. I just cannot keep up with the level of stuff that's going on, because there's obviously a part of me that's speaking now, but there's another part of me that's doing something else with all this. I can't keep up with it. But basically, for example, this alien lady has a little girl, it would appear. I don't know whether it's my little girl or whether it's her. I know it's her little girl, but I don't know what my involvement is. It could be that it's my daughter. It might not be. I've no idea. I'm just assessing what I've seen. This little girl that she showed me is absolutely adorable. I mean, just adorable. And she was blonde, white-skinned, white-haired, blue-eyed, distinctly alien, very much so, but just adorable. Little girl, just like our kids are. And I thought to myself, there's a great... and one of the things they said, was that they too were up against species survival issues and nature, and just like humans are. But it was just fascinating. Isn't it just fascinating? Could we not know about their education system? Why have I got such vagary? I get disappointed in my own experiences because I tell you that, René, but I want to know more. I want to know, this little girl, how she's schooled, where does she fit in, all this kind of thing. But obviously they're doing something else. Obviously they're tracking something else. Obviously they're doing something that doesn't quite apply to what I want, because there's obviously something going on that I don't quite understand and I'm not being told. But yeah, little girl, I'll never forget it. Just adorable, but not human, honestly. And I think that trait of love and understanding is prevalent across the universe, isn't it? That kind of parenting kind of thing. I've never had children. I've always wanted children, René, but I've never had them. But that parenting kind of vibe, I think, is present.
Well, I mean, you always hear people talking about, and I think we even mentioned it earlier on in the show about, do they have emotions? Do they, what is their spirituality?
Yeah,
that sort
fully.
of thing.
Maybe not answering. Yeah.
And
yeah,
is it
no,
possible that we have a lot more in common with them than not?
Yes, it is. It's very true that we have a lot more in common with them than what we actually think. There's a distinct possibility that we are related to them. There's a distinct possibility that humanity is in fact part of an ancient civilization that wasn't even on Earth and has moved to Earth. If you look at the stuff to do with the pyramids in, for example, pyramids in Scotland that they've kept quiet about, pyramids in Ireland that they've kept quiet about, the fact that the Nordics, the blonde, blue-eyed ETs, were seen in kind of like were seen first by the Zulu nation, but also were in China. They were also in Ireland. They're present. There's a possibility that they're still around us. There's a distinct possibility that some of them might be living in the cities of our world among us. It's happening, that we are maybe closer to them than we would ever know, René. And it's a very elitist thing. It's a very kind of closed shop. It's something that the public doesn't see for reasons unknown, and that's very interesting. So we see all this disclosure stuff going on, but it isn't really disclosure. It's barely touched the surface. From what I've seen 2 US Air Force pilots track a UFO, and that's meant to be part of a secret program to investigate. It's barely touched the surface. It's barely touched the surface. But governments do know. I think they've known since the 1950s and 60s that we are not alone in the universe, and that we are looking at a vast ocean of environments, of factors, of issues that are going on out there. We certainly are, and I think mankind is transcending. I think they are on a path. I think the whole of mankind is on a spiritual path, definitely so.
Well,
to transcend.
I hope so. But back to that idea of disclosure, it takes me back to the chat room, and it was an interesting question. I think he already probably knows the answer himself. But Tom Rader says, can the government really have disclosure without denying its efforts in suppressing what it's known all these years? Denial is an antonym of disclosure. So unless they're willing to admit they lied to us all these years, not sure they'll ever come clean.
He's absolutely correct there. You see, it's the classified projects that they've got themselves involved with, which Eisenhower knew of, the dodgy goings on with all that, which is shocking. Then, for that reason, they're never going to fully disclose to the public that we are not alone in the universe. They're just not going to do it. And there's quite a circus about it, isn't there? But yeah, I totally agree with that. They're not going to go down that route, I don't think. We're never going to see full disclosure. And there again, don't wish you might get it, because it's a very uncertain universe out there with very uncertain people out there. We're not alone. And it's a good job sometimes that we're vast distances, because we'd end up, I think, in some cases, if we met aliens that look like us but are human looking, we'd probably end up going to war with them and bombing them, and just because it's insane. It's the insanity that's ingrained with us, isn't it? I feel, which is very disappointing. It really is. I don't know why we can't live in peace and harmony, René.
I really don't either. I don't get it. I guess it's all about greed, and I'm not sure where that comes from in humans, but
yeah.
That's greed and thirst for power.
Yes.
But
yes.
Gosh, it's just, there's so much to think about here. You mentioned the whole idea about, collapsing of time and all that. And, maybe they're related to us and and maybe they're, coming to us from other places. If this idea of, sort of the collapsing of time exists, then could they be us from the future?
Yes, yeah. There's a very distinct possibility. There's a very distinct possibility of that. There's a very distinct possibility of the complexity of the creator, the complexity of the intelligence behind all this, which is like a supreme architectural type thing, situated very, very complex. There's a possibility that some of the alien interaction that goes on with an alien could be yourself reincarnated. You could be you looking at you in a different incarnation. It can happen. So that there's all that going on as well. It's a staggering complexity to behold, but there is a possibility that you're looking at yourself into future lives. Everybody talks about past lives, but there's also future lives as well. And there's also parallel universes. There is definitely parallel universes going on as well. It's in the complexity of it is absolutely staggering. It really, really is. And still, when speaking to you as the narrator of this story, I'm still baffled as to why it's happened to me. And I'm still kind of a bit disappointed that I can't give a coherent picture, a fully coherent picture of why it's going on and what for. It's all a picture, isn't it? Disjointed of different bits of information that join together to make a very rough kind of picture of something going on, of a battle to do with humanity, of the fact that these ETs have a technological base that's very advanced and a spirituality component that is very advanced in their understanding of the cosmos, and the fact that humanity seems to have this oppressive behind-the-scenes dictatorship of some description that it can't seem to understand as well. We're battling against all these factors, and the aliens appear to have their own agendas, which is carefully kept hidden. But they do have agendas, René. They definitely do, and I'm not sure whether you can trust them. In fact, in my business, there are no friends. That's the rule. You are no friends with anyone in my line of work. It has to be like that, or you won't survive, because you can, human beings, social media get very nasty. You get very nasty indeed. So no friends in my line of work, René. No friends at all. Not that I'm saying, by the way, that you're not a friend, but you get me drift. You've got to have your back.
Yeah.
You've got to know, you know what I'm saying. That's the way it is.
Trust no one. Trust no one.
Yeah. Actually, I'm a very trusting guy, but life has taught me, especially with all this going on, that you literally trust no one. Yeah, that's quite right. You can't trust anyone. Yeah. I mean, I had an incident with an Air Force colonel. The U.S. Air Force emailed me. When was it now? Oh, about a few months back. Very well written letter. We want to know about national security. We're doing a study on UFOs. We need your help. Very well written letter. Turned out, René, when I investigated the guy who sent me the email, he'd sent a photo of himself. That photo, it turns out, belonged to a gentleman who'd been in charge of an airbase and had been arrested for child pornography charges. And they'd sent this fantastic looking email that was so well written, but I was being stitched, or, well, it was avoided anyway. It could have been very embarrassing. But the email was just so well written about the fact that they wanted disclosure. They wanted to get to the bottom of the UFO phenomena, this, that, and the other. Colonel so-and-so of air intelligence. It was so this is the kind of thing you're up against, you see. You're up against the fantasists. You're up against strange goings-on. It's all a bit breathtaking. Perhaps I should retire from it all.
Yeah. Well, I hope not. Then how would we get our information? Because the aliens aren't talking to me.
No, well, this is it. You see, don't wish because you might get it, and that's the thing with me. Don't wish because you might get what you wish for, and then you'll know about it. I'm
not wishing for that.
No, certainly not.
What I would like to, have a more confirmation, just personally, of like a really, really compelling sighting or something, but I don't know if I'm ready for an up close and personal experience that I remember anyway. I can't say that I haven't had any, but
yeah, well, this is it. So you see, the thing is that I've had the sightings. I've also had the unmarked helicopters appear and film me. I've even had a few months ago. I had a tornado jet pass very low over me. And I mean very low, and it had all the camera gear on it and all the bristling with pods and all sorts on it. So I know for a fact that this UFO situation is being closely monitored, and I know for a fact that we're somehow being warned by them to abort from a particular course of action. Why the bloody hell they can't just get on with it and turn up at some Air Force base somewhere and say, look, here we are, this is what we do, this is why we're here? It would help, but we've got this ridiculous I'm very disappointed that we've got this vagary. We've got this vagueness from them as to what their true intentions are when you're dealing with them. And that really disappoints me, because I'm a Yorkshireman. I like to be upfront and very plain spoken. And so, but we're just not getting that spade is a spade kind of thing from them. We're just getting this vagary, and it irritates me because I want to know what's going on. But there again, it's not safe. For example, René, a professor in Mexico emailed me. He's a very eminent professor, in Mexico, and he emailed me because he believed that I was having UFO contact, which I am. It's going on, and he was asking all kinds of questions and asking, could I get them to communicate with me? Could they give me information to help with my scientific study? And I'm thinking, well, indeed so. If that's the case, why the hell can't they? But I said to him that the thing is with it, Professor, is that if they do communicate with you and you put that in the public domain of the information that is scientific, that you understand and they understand, because he's a very clever man and it's very advanced, he puts it in the public domain, he'll be mysteriously targeted, René. He'll be targeted by something that is mysterious and he doesn't understand. He'll get hit. And that's the tragedy of it. That's the tragedy of it all. That this man, who's more qualified than I am, and would probably even understand it better than I would, is denied access to the information, and the people in the UFOs are not giving that information. And if he was to put it out there, he would then be mysteriously targeted by MK Ultra style technology. It's an absolute tragedy.
It really is.
Yeah.
How many people do you think are actually, we're almost out of time, but do you think there's that many people out there that are being targeted?
Yes, I do. I think they're targeted at many levels. I think some people are just targeted for the sheer laughter value of it, for the sheer vindictiveness of it. And I think other people are targeted because they're viewed as subversives, and other people are neurally monitored and targeted because of their strange goings-on. And I think it's being kept quiet about. In fact, I think it's a very, very big scandal. I think we had some guys in California who were part of the, they were homosexual, I think. And they were all being targeted at the same time by the same woman with the same voice in the head.
Wow.
They were all,
we're going to have to continue this again, Tony. Yeah. You're going to have to come back because the music's rolling and the show's ending.
Right.
And I wish you all the best and happy holidays. Thank you so much, Tony Topping. Go to tonytopping.wordpress.com. Get more information and stay tuned. Also, check him out on YouTube. I did. Take care, everybody. Happy holidays. Merry Christmas. Happy Hanukkah.
When we go out to eat, we never agree on where to go.
I want burgers. Pizza.
Tacos it is.
The one thing we do agree on is we all want unlimited high-speed data. That's why we switched to Metro PCS.
Stop by Metro PCS with the whole family and get 4 lines with unlimited LTE data for just $100, period. Metro PCS. Wireless. Figured out.
Coverage not available in some areas. Offers require port and of number not currently active on T-Mobile network. During congestion, the fraction of customers using more than 35 gigs per month may notice reduced speeds. Video streams at up to 40p. No tethering. See store for details in terms of